Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to another video. So after receiving a lot of requests for creating videos on React unit testing, I have decided to come up with another video on React testing. And in this video, we will see how we can test our state variable, search functionality, fetch API call, and how to generate the test coverage report and how to do the snapshot testing using React testing library, mock service worker, and Jest as a test runner. So if this sounds interesting, then stick around. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. Alright guys, so if you are looking for a solution to do a quick documentation or a knowledge base, then I have a very quick solution here, which is spreading. It is an AI powered tool which will help you to transform your code into the documentation. And it is very simple to use. It is just has 5 steps. So you generate the directory, you generate your documents from the code, you use the code with AI, you improve your writing of the documentation, and then you just publish the documents. And this tool is absolutely free. So let me give you a quick walkthrough of the product. You can just click on sign up for free and you can just have your account created. So this is the dashboard where I have my workspace. So I can quickly create a project. I will click on create a project. And now what I will do is I'm going to use this AI for generating my directories. All right, and the product description is, and I'm going to click on generate directory. All right, so now you see that all the directories are generated. We can simply click on the apply. Now we only have 2 files. For introduction, we are not going to add anything. I will just click on submit for preview. And for the benefits of the REST API, so we are going to click on edit, and then we are going to have a generate outline. And I'm going to click on generate. All right, so we have the outline here. Now, apart from that, we can also add the code. So what I will do is I'm going to click here and then I can simply add the code. So I will go to the code block and you will see that we have this. So I'm going to enable this code with AI and we will see that convert code, and we can convert the code in any of the language. Choose the language as Python and you will see the Python code is generated, and I'm going to click on insert. So now you see that we have another tab which has the Python code. We can also do one more thing. If we want to improve our writing, we can just select this, we can click on the AI and we can click on improve writing. You can click on the replace and it is going to replace. Now I will show you how we can publish this document. So we are going to click on submit for preview, and now we are ready to publish our document. So we are simply going to click on publish, and here we need to provide the online site domain. So what I will do is I'm going to use API and I'm going to click on OK. So it is going to take some time and it will publish my documentation. If I click on benefits of REST API, then this is the documentation we have. We have also included the code. So you will see the code in different languages. All right, guys. So I have already created my React project using create React app, and I'm not going to go into too basic of what is React testing library or what is just runner, because I have already covered those part into one of my testing videos. So if you haven't seen that video, you can just click on the card above and jump to it directly. So now let's get back to our project and I will give you a quick walkthrough of the project that we have now. So let's go to the source folder, and in the source folder I will go to the index.js, which is a pretty standard the entry point for our React application. Then we will go to the app component. So let me go to the app component, and in the app component you will see that we have 2 state variables. One is the users set user and the search term set search term. And here we have a use effect which actually makes an API call whenever the component is mounted, and we have this fetch which will make the API call and fetch the list of users, and then we just set those users into our one of the state variable. Now if we go to the JSX, then we see that we have an h1 header which has the users as heading. Then we have an input box which will be our search box, and then we have the users component where we pass the users and we pass the search term that the user is trying to search. Now for the input, whenever we type anything in the input box, we make a call to handle change, which is an on change event, and then we take the value and put it in the set search term. Now if we go to our users, then in the users we simply have the props as users and search term, and then we have a function which is a user list. Now this function is going to filter out the results and then generate the JSX based on the filtered result, and here we just return a simple JSX having a user list function called. So that's pretty much we have for this application. Now let's run the application on the local environment. So I'm going to have npm start, and this is going to start my application on the local environment. All right, so now my application is started on the local host 3000. Now if we go here, then we see that this is a simple application where we have the users, we have an input box, and we have the list of users. Now if I go to the inspect element, and if we go to the network tab, so let's see, if I refresh my page, then we see that we make an API call which gives us the list of users. So if we go to the response, then here we see that we have the list of users that we are displaying it here. We display the first name, email address, and the avatar of that particular user. Now let me close this, and if a user wants to search, then we can just make use of a search. So as we type, we will filter out the results based on our search term. All right, so now this is our application, and we need to test the functionalities of this application. So let's go back to our Visual Studio Code, and in the Visual Studio Code, what I will do is I'm going to close this. All right, and then I'm simply going to type npm test. So if we go to our package.json, then we see that we have scripts defined here. So npm start, which we have just done for starting our application, build and test, and we are going to use npm test to run all the test cases that are in our application or in our project. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have npm test, and I'm going to hit enter. All right, so now you will see that this is running all the test cases, and if we scroll up, then we see that we have a one test suite, and we have one test inside that suite which is failing. So if we go to our app.test.js, then here you will see that we have one test suite and we have one test case, which is render learn react link. So this is basically actually looking for a text in our document or in our screen with learn react, but we don't have anything such text in our home page, which is our app.js. So that's why the test case is failing. Now if I scroll up, then you will see the exact reason, and here you will see that unable to find an element with a text, this particular text. Now what we are going to do is we are going to fix this. We will just remove this, and then we are going to write our own test cases. So if we go to our app.js, then the first thing we need to do is we need to write a test case to test our fetch API call, and then get the list of users and set it in our state variable. So in order to do the API testing, what you need to do is first you need to create the mock service worker. So if we go back to the browser and let's search for the mock service worker. So this is the mock service worker which will help us to test our REST API. So we have a REST API in our project and we need to test that. So we can probably use this, and then what we will do is we need to install it. So let's install this. So what I will do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and then I will just copy this. So I'm using the npm, so I'm going to copy this one, and let's go back and let's install that. So I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to install the MSW. All right, I'm going to hit enter, and this is going to install the mock service worker into our project. So if we go to the package.json, we can go and verify. So let's scroll down, and we see that we have this MSW installed here. So now we have this mock service worker. Now we can mock our API. So what I will do is let's go to the app.test. I'm going to remove this. We don't want this. And the first thing we need to do is we need to create a test suite. So let's have the describe, and in the test suite, I will have the test app component. All right. And this will have an arrow function. Now inside this test suite, we can create our multiple tests. So let's have the first test as I'm going to have the renders header text as users. All right, and then I'm going to have an arrow function. So we are starting with a very simple and a basic test case. So what this test case will do is it is going to find a header which has a text as users. And if we go to our app.js, you will see that we have an h1 which contains a text as users. So we just need to test that. So what I will do here is that I'm going to have a constant. We will take the container. All right, and then we will use the render to render our component. So we need to render our app component. So we are going to have the app. All right, then what we will do is we are going to look for the particular text. So in order to that, what I will do is I'm going to have the constant header text. And now this will be equals to, we can use the screen in order to grab the particular text. So what I will do is I'm going to use the screen dot, and then we can use get by text. So we will have the get by text. All right, now we can add the text here. So our text will be users. All right, so this is the text we are looking for. Now once we have the user, what we can do is we can have the expect header text to be Shruti. All right, so we're going to save this. All right, and now you will see that we are using the container. We are taking this container constant, but we are not using it. So that's where I want to show that. Let me run this test case first. So what I will do is I'm going to have the npm test. All right, so this is going to run the test, and we see that we have this render header text as users and one test case is passed. If we want to see the coverage report of our application at this moment, then what we can do is let's close this, and we are going to have the npm test hyphen hyphen, we're going to have hyphen hyphen coverage, and I'm going to hit enter, and this is going to show me the test coverage of our applications. All right, so now if I scroll up, then we see that these are our current test coverage. So we have the percentages, and we see that we don't have the functions and lines as 100%. We are having a lot of uncovered lines. So here you will see that the line number 9, line 14 to 15, line number 30, 7, 11, all these are uncovered. So we haven't returned any test cases to test those lines. So we are going to make this 100%. We are going to make the coverage of the project 100%, and we're going to write all the test cases covering all our lines. All right, so let's go step by step. So first thing, we did this, and now what I'm going to show you is that we will also do the snapshot testing. So the snapshot testing is basically that it creates the snapshot of your component, how it is going to render, and then whenever something is changed on your component, the snapshot testing will fail. So in order to do the snapshot testing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the expect. All right, inside the expect, I'm going to use my container, and I will have two matched, and we're going to use snapshot. All right, and I'm going to save this. Now when I save this, you will see that now the snapshot will be generated in an automatic folder. You will see that we have the snapshot here, and this actually has the app test.js snapshot, and here you will see that we have the test suite 1, we have a one test case, and then we have the one snapshot return. So this is how you do the snapshot testing. Now let's increase our test coverage report. So what we are going to do next is that if we go to the app.js, and here we have already tested this, and here it says that line number 9 is not tested, 14 and 15 it not tested. So if we scroll up, we see that the 14 and 15 is very much related to the API call which we are doing. So that's where we are going to use our mock service worker. So before using that, what we will do is I'm going to create the mock data response. So if I go here, I'm going to create a new folder, and inside the new folder I'm going to have the mock. All right, let's create the mock data first. So I'm going to have a new file here. I will name the file as data.js, and here what I will do is I'm going to have the export constant users data, which will be equals to an array. So let's create an array, and then let's create some mock data. So I'm going to have the ID as 1. I will have the first name. So let's have the first name, and I'm going to have the name as the page. All right, and we just missed the brackets. So I'm going to use this brackets. Let's cut this. Let's add it here. All right, I will save it, and then we will also have our email. So let's have the email as the page @gmail.com, and then we have the avatar. All right, I will have the page.jpg. Let's create one more record. So I'm going to copy this. Let's have it one more. I'm going to change this to 2. This I will change to Nikesh. Let's change this to Nikesh, and I'm going to change this to Nikesh. All right, so now we have our mock data. Now what we will do is let's go back to our app test.js, and now let's create the mock service worker here. So to get the mock service worker, what I will do is first let's import the rest. So I'm going to have the rest from MSW. All right, then I will also import the setup server. So we are going to create a mock server. So let's set up the mock server here. So I will have the server setup, and that will be coming from the MSW/node. All right, we are also going to import our user data. So let's have the user data. All right, now what we are going to do is let's create the server first. So I'm going to have a constant server which will be equals to the setup server. All right, and in this we can actually create our REST API calls. So we will use the REST dot get. All right, and then we are going to pass the URL. So what I will do is I'm going to copy this URL and I will add it here, and this also gives us the request, response, and the context. All right, so this is going to be an arrow function, and whenever we call this URL, we need to return from here. We will return a response which will have the ctx dot status 200. All right, we will have the ctx.json, and we're going to pass the mock data. So this is not something fancy. You will find this information here in the MSW website. So here you will see that how we define the mocks. So I am just following these documents. So you first create the mock definition, then you have to choose the API. We are choosing the REST API. Then you have a REST, and you create a request handler, and you have a response resolver. So I'm going to add the link of the mock service worker in the description, so you can also follow this along. All right, so now let's get back to our Visual Studio Code, and now what we are going to do is we're also going to create 2 more requests for in case if we have a bad request, then what we are going to test. All right, so what I will do is I'm going to have the REST get, and what I will do, I'm going to copy this, I will add it here, and I'm going to have the bad in the end. All right, then I'm going to have the request, response, and context ctx, and in this case what we are going to do is we are going to return a response ctx status 404, or 404, or maybe 400. So I'm going to have the 400, and in this case I will have the ctx json. So I'm going to have a bad response. So currently we don't have this bad response. Let's create this in our mock data. So I'm going to go here in the mock data, then we can have the export constant bad response, which will be equals to an object where I can have a type. Let's have an error, and then we can have the title of this error. So I'm going to have here something when oops, I misspelled the went, so something went. All right, if we go back here, then we can just add the bad response, and then now this is working fine. So now we have already created the mock server. Now what we need to do is we will go to our test soup, and here we need to add before all. So before every test case, what I have to do is I need to listen to my server. So I'm going to have an arrow function. I will have the server dot listen. All right, and then after each of the test case, what I have to do is I have to reset my handlers. So I will have the server dot reset handler. All right, and then after all the test cases, what I will do is I'm going to close my server. So let's have the server dot close. All right, so now we have did this basic setup. Now what we are going to do is I'm going to go here, and then I will have a test case here where I will have that it returns JSON when the response is okay. So we're going to get the JSON response whenever the API call is successful and it returns 200. So we're going to add an async here. Let's add the async. I'm going to have the async here as well. And now in the test case, what I will do is I'm going to have the expect assertion, and we're going to assert 3 things here. All right, I will show you what are those 3 things that we are going to assert here. So what I will do is I'm going to have the constant response, which will be equals to the await. All right, I'm going to have a fetch here, and then I'm going to use the endpoint. So let's use the endpoint. So I'm going to copy, I'm going to add it here. All right, then I will also need pass the method. So I will have the method, and we're going to have the get method. So here you will see that we have the get method. So let's have the get method. Now we have this response. Then what we need to do is I'm going to have the constant data that will be equals to the await res.json. So this is the data that we are going to get. Now what we can do is we can have the expect that this response dot status to be 200. All right, so this is our first assertion, and then the next one will be the expect res dot okay to be true, and then let's have the third assertion, which will be the expect json dot stringify. We're going to stringify the data, and then we are just going to compare to be JSON dot stringify user data. All right, so now we have all the three assertions as passed, and now here you will notice that for the app.js, line number 14 and 15, which were actually this, if we scroll these two, now we have already returned a test case for this, and now it is not listed in this uncovered lines. All right, so the next thing we will do is we are going to write another test case which will return JSON when the response is bad. So what I will do is I'm going to copy this and let's add one more here. All right, return JSON when the response is a bad. All right, so here what we'll do is we are going to change this to bad because we have this bad here. All right, so let's go back here, and then what we will do is we are going to have the data. The response status this time will be 400, which is a bad response, and then we will have the JSON stringify data. This will be equals to the bad response. So let's have the bad response here, and now you will see the test is passed, although we are not seeing any changes in the coverage, but yeah, we are going to write this. The next thing what we need to do is if we go to our app.js, what we have is if we go here and see that we have line number 9 and line number 30, which is uncovered. So the line number 9 is the handle change. So whenever a user type anything into the search bar, then we update the state variable, which is the search term. So we need to write a test case to cover this. And then the other thing is line number 30, which is actually the input box for the search bar. So let's go here, and what we are going to test here is that we are going to test two things. The first one is we're going to have a search bar and the user is not typing anything. The search bar is empty. And the second thing we are going to test is whenever a user types something, we are going to have the handle change. We're going to update the state variable, which is a search term. All right, so what I will do is I'm going to have here a test case which will be a search bar, and we are going to have input is empty. All right, this is going to have an arrow function. We are going to have an async here, so let's have the async, and what we will do is we are going to have a constant. We will take the container, which will be equals to the render, and then we are going to have our app component here. Then what we need to do is we need to grab the search input. So what I will do is I'm going to have the constant search, which will be equals to, we are going to use the screen to grab it. So I will have the screen dot, we are going to have the find by placeholder text. So I will have the find by placeholder text. And what is the placeholder text is, if we go here, we see the placeholder text is search user. So let's copy this. Let's go here, and we are going to have the search users. But you see that we have an error here because this find by search placeholder text, it returns a promise. So let's handle that. So I'm going to have the await, and we're going to use wait for. So let me have the wait for, and this is going to have an arrow function. All right, let me have the arrow function, and I'm going to close the bracket. So we need to import this. So let's go here and let's have the wait for. So this is going to have a mock kind of a promise return. So we have this input search now. Now what we will do is once we have the input search, we will have to match the snapshot. So I'm going to have the expect container to match snapshot. All right, and the second thing what I have to do is expect input search. All right, I will have the to have attribute. So this input search is going to have an attribute which is value, and it's going to have empty. So we are not typing anything. So I'm going to save it, and we see that the test is passed, and we now have the 4 tests. And yet you also see that now in the app.js we have 9 and 30, which is uncovered. So we will have to write another test case which is going to have a search bar where a user is having some value inside the search bar. So I'm going to copy. Let's have one more, and in this case search bar input has value. So I'm going to have the input, and this input is going to have a value. We will have a very similar, we will have the container, we will have the input search, but once we have the input search, we need to fire and change event. So for this we will use a fire event. So we're going to have the fire event. Now let's go here, and what we will do is we are going to have the fire event dot change. So we need to fire a change event, and whenever we have a change event, this should be on which element? So it should be on the input search. And when we fire the change event, we need to change the target value. So we are going to have the target. All right, we are going to have the value on this target, and we will have a search value here. Currently we don't have anything in the search value, so let's create a constant. So I'm going to go here, I will have the search value, and I'm going to simply have a value as test. All right, so now let's go back, and here what we will do is we are going to have the search value. Then in this case we will have the expect container matching to the snapshot, and then we have the expect input value, and this value will be the search value, and I'm going to save it. So we see that it is failing. One snapshot is failing, so what we can do is we will just have to update it. So I'm going to write W, and then we will have this U. So press U to update all the failing snapshots. So I'm going to have U, and this is going to update everything. So now you see that for the app.js we now have the 100% coverage. So we have returned the test case for every line that we have in the app.js, and we are testing it. All right, so now the next thing what we need to do is we will also need to test our user.js. So if we go to the user.js, here you will see that we accept two props, which is a user array, and then we have the search term. We pass it to the user list function, which is going to filter the results, and then we just loop through the results using a map, and then we display the results. So to do that, what we need to do is first we need to create the test file. So I'm going to go here, I will have user.test.js. Now in this user.test.js, what we will do is as soon as we create the file, we start getting a test suite, which is one field, because we don't have anything in this file. So let's add it. So what I will do is I'm going to have import render screen from, and here I'm going to have the testing React. All right, I will also need to have my test data. So I will have the user data, and then we are testing the user component. So let's import the user component. So I'm going to have the user component. All right, now what I will do is I'm going to create a function which is going to render our component with the prop. So I will have a simple render with prop. So let's have the arrow function, and this function is simply going to return my user component. So let's have the user component, and this user component is going to have two props. One will be the users, which will contain the user data, and the second one will be the search term, which will have the search term, and this function is going to have an argument as search term. All right, now let's write a test suite first. So I'm going to have describe, and we are going to have the test user component, and we are going to have an arrow function. We will save it, but you will see that we are still having a failing test suite, because whenever you create a test suite, the test suite should have at least one test case in it. So let's have a test case here, and the first test case what we are going to do is for this user.js, it is very simple. What we need to do is we need to test that we render the data with the search term, and we render the data without a search term. So here it's a filtered list. So if a user is not type anything, that means the search term is empty. We will render the whole list of the users, and if we have some search term, we will only render the user which has that search term. All right, or which is just matching to the search term. So first let's have render users in user component with search term. So that means a user has typing something, and we need to match that particular user. All right, so I'm going to have an async here. Okay, and here what we will do is let's have the container first. So I'm going to have the container, which will be equals to the render with props, and we have a search term. So I'm going to have a search term as the page, and I'm passing the page because if we go to our data.js, we see that we have the page as a record. So we are just passing a search term as the page, and we need to fetch this record. All right, and we need to filter this record. All right, so now if we go back here, then let's grab the email. So what I will do is I'm going to have the email, which will be equals to the await screen dot find all by test id. Find all by test id. Now you must be wondering what this test id is, and we are going to have the test id as email. So let's go to the user.js, and in the user.js you will see that we have this paragraph tag where we have added the data hyphen test id, and the id is email. So this is the test id, and we are trying to to grab this element using the test ID. So we have this. Now what we will do is we are going to have expect container, and this will be to match snapshot. Let's create the snapshot of user.js. All right. And then we will also have the expect. We will have this email array. So we are going to have this email array, and we will only have the one record, because only if we go here, then we see that if we match the page with these two records, we will only have this one record filtered out. All right. So let's go here. We are going to have this dot text content, and we will have to be, and what I will do is I'm going to have a test@gmail.com just for now. Okay. And then what we will do is we are going to have expect this email dot length to equal 1. All right, because we will be only filtering out one results based on the search term. All right, I will save it, and you will see that this test case will start failing. All right, we have a failed test case. So if we scroll up, and if we see the error, what we see is we see that unable to find an element by data hyphen test ID is equal to email. All right, so we have some problem here. So if we go up, then we see that we haven't rendered the user properly. So what we will do is we are going to have a return, but we will need to have a render here. All right, so let's add the render. All right, and now the test case is failing, and we see that the expected value is test@gmail.com, but what we have received is the page@gmail.com. Yeah, so in this case, what we will do is we are just going to change this to the page, and now our test case will pass. We see that the test coverage is now 100%, and we have no uncovered line. But what we will do is we are also going to write one more test, which will be that what if user is not typing anything and we have an empty search. All right, so in this case, we will pass the empty search, and we will change this render user in user component with empty search term. In this case, what we will do is we are just going to remove this, and we are going to have the length as user data dot length, because we are going to return all the results from the user data. All right, so now we have that all the test cases are passing. We have also tested everything and each of the uncovered line. Now if you want to update the snapshots, you can always have this W, and then you can use U in order to update. So I'm going to use U in order to update, but since we have all the snapshots updated, so we will not see an option to update it. The next thing what I want to show you is that if we go here, then you will see that we have this coverage folder now. All right, in the coverage folder, we see that we have this index.html. So what I will do is I'm going to open it with the live server, and we will see here that this is our coverage report. All right, so we have all the statements, branches, functions, lines, and we have no uncovered lines for our project. All right, so now this is a small project where we generated the test report. We have a very limited test cases, but when you actually work in the project in the companies, this testing is very important. So you need to have your testing, you need to have your coverage report with a minimum threshold value where you will cover all your lines of code which you have written. So that's all I have in this video. I hope you liked the video. Thumbs up is appreciated. You can also connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter for latest updates. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. Thank you. Thanks for watching.